You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
All right, what's up, Coaches Nation? Great to see you again. If you're listening to this in somewhat real time, it's starting to get spring out where I'm at. I hope it is for you too. Beautiful weather always puts me in a good mood. This is Dr. Sherry Llewellyn. We are here with our co-host, the amazing Faisal Ansan, and we have a really cool guest with us today. His name is Willie, and you guys are going to absolutely fall in love with him as quickly as I did. And speaking of love, he is a relationship coach, which he's going to unpack. And his story about how he got into relationship coaching, I think, is going to be a really good encouragement for all of you. So you don't want to miss out on this one. So before we launch into his story, Willie, we always do wins on our podcast, just like we do in the Coaching Mastery community, which you're a part of when we start out any session. So what are some wins that you've had this week?
Well, a major win is one of my clients yesterday. We actually had our first session, and I actually talked to Jeff a little bit about it, but this woman, this young lady, she just was really completely broken, and she didn't really feel great about herself. And after we had our session yesterday, and I got her to recognize how amazing she actually is, because what she does is she's a caregiver for her mom. And I asked her, to explain to me what a caregiver is to her in her own words, and how does she view a caregiver? And she said, well, caregivers are superheroes. They are amazing. They are great people. And, she goes into this whole spiel of how she viewed a caregiver. And I said, oh, that's great. I said, aren't you a caregiver? And right then and there, she just stopped, and she realized that when I initially, we had our intake session, and she was saying that she didn't think well of herself, or she didn't know why she didn't love herself or anything like that. But after that session, she realized that she actually is a superhero, and she realized that she's actually amazing. And our session went totally different than our intake session. So for me, that was a win, because she was actually able to realize that she is amazing, and what she's doing is amazing. So that was a win.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
That is awesome. That's the power of coaching right there.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Awesome job in leading her in that shift.
Thank you.
Yeah. Faisal, share with us some amazing wins.
Anyway, I'm actually, this is a cool thing. I'm actually going through relationship coaching, and I'm being coached. Even my personal coaches, they're coaching me on the relationship side. So it's going to be, I think, a really interesting conversation. There's been a lot of breakthroughs, and one breakthrough has been in the vulnerability area, where I didn't even it's a 5-year problem I think we solved in one session. And
wow.
And then I can talk about it later. But also one other big thing is that this is next week. I'm not just speaking, but doing a live coaching session on my biggest event yet. It's a live 3-day summit. It's going to be really cool. Never done anything like this. There could be a few thousand people or a few hundred people. I don't know who's going to be there. I've only tried this session with maybe 14, 15 people max.
Wow.
So it'll be really cool to see what happens.
That's awesome. Congratulations on landing that opportunity. I'm sure there'll be more to come.
Yes, I'm counting on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me, I had a really cool win yesterday. And so my experience as a coach, I've been a psychologist and doing therapy / behavior change, all that stuff for like 20 years. But coaching is, is very different, and which we've had episodes on in the past. So I'm not going to regurgitate that. But I still struggle with, I've had clients and coaches who have coached me who are very rigid in how they want the coaching to be done. And so, but that's not how my life is. And so, so I've really struggled with some of those clients and those coaches, and almost feel like there was something wrong. Like I'm not doing this correctly, or, I need to, change my life to meet their demands and their expectations. But yesterday I had a session with a client, and she's got an extremely chaotic life. She was 20 minutes late because she had to wrap up something, which was, it is what it is. And I understand that. And so she's like, well, should we reschedule? Should we just power through the rest of the hour? I'm like, well, let's just use the time we got. And so we did. And she had a couple really, really powerful insights during that, like 25 minutes or so. I gave her some advice because she asked me specifically about something that I have experience on. And so it was cool because sometimes I get the impression, I'm still figuring this all out. Sometimes I get the impression that, the ideal coaching is where the client always has to come up with their own answers, and it has to be in this, perfectly allotted time, and this beautiful, it's like everything's orchestrated perfectly. But in the midst of a chaotic day where carved out a little time, and it was such a powerful time for her. And it really gave me really good insight that it's meeting the client where they're at and providing whatever value they need in the moment, not based on any sort of crazy expectations of what the coaching hours should be. So that was just really a good reminder to me. I'm like, okay, the times when I'm feeling like maybe I'm not a good fit, or, questioning myself, is, I don't know, it just gave me a lot of freedom to really be a lot more flexible in how I do things, and honestly, who my ideal client or coach is. Like, anyway, so that was just a real big epiphany to me. She even messaged me afterwards. She's like, that was an incredible session. She's like, it was so short, but she's like, I love getting down to the nitty gritty, getting some good stuff done. And then she messaged me later that evening, and the stuff I'd given her some advice on, she was like, it was amazing. You were spot on. This happened. And it was a beautiful thing. So anyway, that was kind of long-winded, but yeah, we're all just figuring this out, trying to figure out how our lifestyles, how our personalities, how we think fit in with how we can best add value to other people. And then sometimes when you bump up against people that don't fit that, I still sometimes question myself. And so that was really good affirmation for me.
Yeah. And I love that. And I want to honor you for vulnerably sharing that. And I just want to say this, and remember this, you are good the way you are. You get to choose how you grow, and you get to be how you want to be, not based on other people's expectations or anything like that. And just as a reference, I actually work with quite a few clients like that who have lots going on, and they will be late for the session. I'll have their attention for 50 minutes, 40 minutes, 1 hour, and I have to do the best that I can in those moments. But they are probably some of the most insightful moments that they have throughout the week. And one of the things that I've learned with these clients is not to get stuck on time. Just like you put it, I care more about the quality and the insights within the session and what they can apply in their life.
Yeah.
And that requires me to be, even though I'm pretty good with my time, I will show up on time most places. And to have that same expectation from somebody else who has a different experience of life is, one, unrealistic. Two, you're boxing them into your perception of what life should be, which is generally not a good thing for a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, I think it made me realize that I'm pretty sensitive to my perception of others people's judgment, and those scenarios. And there have been a couple times where I was clearly being judged because of how crazy busy my life is and how I've got all these things happening. And which is frustrating because it's like, well, that's my life. I want it that way because that's how I'm pursuing multiple things. And anyway, so it was freeing to see how much value she got. And it gave me the reinforcement that, just to make sure that I'm surrounding myself by the people that appreciate or that can respect at the very least, kind of that. And so thank you, Faisal, for being that kind of coach, because I happen to know somebody that you coach who has an extremely busy lifestyle. And I know he is canceled on you probably last minute more than once and probably shows up late. But I also know that he gets a lot of value out of it. So
you know what, Sherry, I think it was the late hour yesterday because I had a client show up late too, about 10 minutes. And, it was kind of like almost that same thing. And the funny part about it is she told me, she's like, and it's so funny when people call me Mr. Willie, it just always cracks me up. But she's like, Mr. Willie, I know that I'm late. So, if you want to, on the back end, dock me 10 minutes. I understand that if we don't go to full and, just you can take that 10 minutes off and, and we can, we can get into it, but it was just funny that she mentioned that, and I'm like, okay, well, that shows that she's appreciative of my time.
Absolutely.
And I was like, and then now, I'm a softie too. Now I'm like, I ain't gonna dock you 10 minutes, man. We gonna, I'm gonna make sure I can still squeeze in that hour, just,
right?
Just make sure we get everything, like you said, taken care of. But I think it was just, I don't know what was going on yesterday because I had a late client too.
Well, and I think the perspective is rather than you're paying me for an hour, it's rather you're paying me for experience and for a change. And, the gauntlet has just been thrown. And now my job is to get you the same amount, if not more change in less time.
Yes.
So, so.
Which is actually a very important topic in coaching, time, which is a big realization because I know that if you coach with me 4 or 5 years ago, you would have had to work with me for 2 years to get the same amount of results that I can give you in 3 to 6 months. Huge difference. So it's not the time, it's the skill set, the experience, like you said, the what we build with clients in that thing. And the better we get, time becomes less and less important. What's more important is the experience itself.
Yeah. All right. I feel like we could go on for a whole hour on this, but then we would not be able to hear any value out of Mr. Willie's story. Before we jump into his story, just want to recognize and honor our sponsor for this podcast, which is the Coaching Mastery Community. The Coaching Mastery Community is a virtual community for coaches of all sorts of certifications to be able to come together, to be able to learn from each other, to be able to get momentum based on the encouragement and peer support from each other, learning more coaching skills, learning business skills to better grow the coaching. It's really like you get your certification and then it's like you can drop off into the abyss. Like, what do I do? Where do I go? And so Coaching Mastery Community is kind of like the bridge between your coaching certification and success in your coaching. It helps you kind of get clarity in what to do and how to do it and around people that you actually want to be around, which is a bonus. Anything that you want to add, either Willie or Faisal, to that?
I want to hear from Willie because I want to hear his experience.
Well, I honestly feel that our community is absolutely amazing. Just like Sherry said, when you get certified as a coach, it's kind of like you are like on an island by yourself and like, okay, what do I do now? And when you're out there by yourself and you're just pedaling around, you're like, okay, what's next? And then once I came into the community and just to be embraced by the community and all of the insight and to be able to connect with other coaches from different areas, it's just absolutely amazing because you get to learn from each and every person that you encounter. And when you also are able to also contribute to it, that feels good. And it just helps you with your coaching career, because now you have like-minded people that don't only become, I could say partners in crime, but also starts to feel like a family,
Yeah.
because, you can actually, connect with them and talk to them. And, if you need to shoot somebody a text, they're there, they're available. So the community is absolutely amazing. So, I definitely would recommend any new coach to join the community, because it's what you're looking for, it's what you need. It helps you grow in your business, and also, gain more skills to be more successful. So I feel amazing just being here and being a part of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
we enjoy
Thank
having
for
you as
sharing.
well. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Willie, you live in Vegas, you work at a casino, you've had a failed marriage, failed relationships in the past, and you are a relationship coach now.
Yes. Yes.
So I always love throwing these things out, because it's like, what? Like, that's unexpected, right?
Yeah.
But I would love for you to share with us, how did you get into the space of deciding to coach? What did that look like? Share your story with us.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. Well, it started many years ago. I had previously been married for 10 years, and that marriage failed horribly. And there was a lot of things that happened in that marriage that I wasn't aware of. I was very ignorant in that marriage, and also I was young. And I'm gonna go back to that, because I'm gonna add in what I found after the fact. So that marriage was failed, and then I decided that, it's time for me to settle down. I just had that drive to want to settle down, to want to be in a relationship. And I met a young lady that I thought that it was going to work, and she was physically abusive, she was mentally abusive, she was emotionally abusive. So it was a very, very tough relationship, and I needed to find my way out of it. I was like, and I actually wound up running to Vegas. I literally had to get out of the state that I was in to basically kind of get away from her, because she was that crazy, and it can't put it any other way. So then once I get to Vegas, I met a young lady and we started dating. This relationship, of course, this is going on the third relationship. And during this relationship, it was actually the worst of the worst. And what I mean by that is, during this relationship, I literally wind up becoming homeless. This woman had cheated on me horribly. I attempted to kill myself. I attempted to commit suicide. And during this relationship, and this was the woman that I had actually loved more than I ever loved any woman in my life. I never loved anybody the way that I loved this woman. And she actually was, after I attempted to kill myself and I'm laying in the hospital, the guy she was cheating on me with, her and I had went and was looking at a place together, but come to find out, she also was looking at that same place with this other man. And I had given her funds to help put down the down payment on the place and things like that. And she was doing the same with him. And while I was in the hospital, she was actually at that house that we supposed to be moving into with this other man. And then it gets even worse, because after she was cheating with this man, and when I was in Michigan, I had moved all my furniture from my house that I had in Michigan to Vegas. So not only did we were getting this house together, I furnished the house. I literally furnished the house, and then when we decided that we didn't want to be together anymore, and I called the police, the police told me there's nothing that they can do. So now my furniture is left in this house. And at this point, the furniture left in the house. I'm homeless. I tried to kill myself. And not only that, my house that I had in Michigan, I lost that house, due to everything that was going on with her. We had vehicles together, and I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I want to just kind of paint this picture of how this relationship was.
Yeah.
So we also had vehicles together, and she stopped paying the note on one of the vehicles. And when I was trying to get my furniture out of the house, she told me, she said, well, the only way I'll give you your furniture is if you give me your Jeep, and I actually, at one moment, I was actually just living out of my Jeep because, like I said, I was homeless. So as I started to, get my life a little bit on track, I was like, look, I just want my furniture. I want to be done with you. I don't care. You can have the Jeep. So I gave her the Jeep. I took the other truck, and not knowing that she hadn't paid the note in over 7 months.
Oh, geez.
And so then after we switch vehicles, I get my furniture, come to find out the Jeep the truck that I got from her, she hadn't paid the note on it. So they came and repoed it. So now I'm without a vehicle. Okay. Then the Jeep that I gave her that I was paying a note on, and it was up. The note was, everything was good and close to being paid off. She stopped paying the note on that. So then they came after me for that Jeep. So in that relationship, I lost my house, lost both my vehicles, tried to kill myself and didn't lose my life, almost lost my life, and a mountain of debt. And that all came from that one relationship. So it was kind of like after my marriage and then getting into a relationship, and everything just kind of just seemed to like snowball. Yeah. It's like, if you can imagine being at the top of a mountain and, the marriage is at the top, and then things start going downhill, and it's a little bitty snowball when it starts, but then once it gets to the bottom, it's a boulder. And that's kind of where I was. And after all of that going on, what I remember is when I was literally laying on my deathbed. So as I was laying in the hospital, and I'm laying there, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, wow, I should be dead, And the doctor came in, and what I had did was I went to one of the pharmacies. I think it was, I don't know if it was Rite Aid or whatever, but I went to the store and I got the most potent, the strongest sleeping pills that was out there that you can find, that was on the shelf. And I had, at the time where we were staying, I went there and I took half the bottle. I took half the bottle of the sleeping pills, and I had talked to her, and I told her, you ain't got to worry about me anymore. I'm taking my life. I'm done. I'm checking out. And when that happened, she called the ambulance, and the ambulance came. And once they took me to the hospital and they seen how many pills that I took, they were going to pump my stomach, to try to make me throw up. But what they did was they gave me some type of chalk, something, whatever. But I never threw up. So that night, and this was the turning point for me in my mind. But at that night, when I knew how many pills I took, and they had me in the hospital, that entire night, all the way until the next morning, I never went to sleep. I never fell asleep. Out of all of those sleeping pills that I took, I never went to sleep. They never pumped my stomach. They never did any of that. And the next morning when the doctor came in and see me, and he told me, he said, first of all, we ran your blood work and we found no trace of the pills in your system. And they're like, you didn't throw up. You didn't go to sleep. We don't know what happened, why, they couldn't understand it. They're like, you shouldn't be right here, right now. This shouldn't be you, because none of the things that should have happened, none of it happened. You never went to sleep after taking all of those pills. We never pumped your stomach. And now we can't even find any trace of it in your system.
Wow. So
when that happened, as I laid there, I was like, you know what? There's a purpose for my life. Mm. So there's a reason that this all transpired. I'm like, there's a reason that, I didn't die. There's a reason that, I went through all of that. I said, I know it's a purpose for it. There's a reason. I can't see it right now because I'm in it, So with that being said, that's what kept me driving, even though after coming out of the hospital, finding out how she's still with this guy, trying to get my furniture, and everything is still in shambles. But when I left the hospital that day, I left with the knowing that there's something bigger than me. My life has a purpose because the fact that I didn't die. I didn't die, and there's so many other things that should have happened during that moment, and none of it happened. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm like, I don't know what it looked like. I don't know what it is at the moment. I don't know, but I know it's something. So
what's interesting, Willie, if I can just pause for a sec, is last week we had a guest on, Arena, and she said something very similar in that she had a near-death experience. And that was a pivotal moment in her life that completely shifted things for her. And I'm wondering, so, I think that's a theme for some people. It's like it's something that completely rocks your world. Like, this should happen, it didn't, and, based on beliefs, I'm here for a reason. And I guess I got to figure that out. And I'm curious, after the fact, as you were still struggling and trying to figure out what that all meant, what was that next glimmer that made you be like, oh, maybe this is part of the reasons that I'm still here?
Well, when after everything, and I met my wife during all of that, and then as things started to get better in my life, it was really crazy. People start coming to me for advice. And I found myself, not being certified at the moment, but I found myself coaching people and counseling people like consistently. I mean, it was like everybody was coming to me and wanting some advice or wanting me to help them, in their relationships and in their life and everything that was going on. And I was like, all right, and I told people, it was probably about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I always told people, I'm gonna be a life coach. I always said that, didn't know how I was gonna do it, didn't know how I was gonna get there. But when people start coming to me and leaning on me for advice and to help them with their relationship and help them move through their life journeys and anything that was going on, and I got a sense of, for one, of belonging and having that opportunity to give back, and sharing my story and realizing that it wasn't just me that went through things they didn't go that far as killing themselves, but they've been in situations where, they were like down at the bottom. So being able to help them and kind of talk them through it and give them advice, I was like, wow, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing, But then once the pandemic hit, and I was like, well, you know what? It's time to go ahead and do it. It's time to get certified. It's time to go out there, and do what it is that I'm supposed to do. And, and once I got certified, it got even better on, helping couples and helping, people's that's about to get married and helping people within their marriage. And then I really knew, I'm like, all right, this is it. I'm like, I'm here. It is funny. The other night, my daughter, who's 12, said, Daddy, you're like Cupid. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. I was like, I never looked at it like that, but okay. I said, I take that.
The wisecrack in me would have been what? Like, you think I'm so old I need diapers already?
Right.
Oh, how sweet that your 12-year-old recognizes the gift that you have and how you're serving the world with it.
Yeah, it's funny. She's amazing. She's an amazing kid, But yeah, that's kind of where it was more so of people actually coming to me and asking me, for advice. And then once I thought I was doing the right thing until I actually went, through my coaching certification. I'm like, oh, okay, I need to help them. I don't need to advise them, I mean, I need to help them figure it out. I need to, guide them so that they can figure it out. I was like, oh man. I was like, yeah, I help some people, but I was going about this thing all wrong.
Maybe not all wrong. Give yourself some credit. I think advice and sharing with people our own experiences and what worked is, or what didn't work, is super duper important. But it sounds like you're getting more well balanced and being able to facilitate a discussion where they can kind of find their own truths as well.
Yeah, I really want to honor you for actually recognizing. I mean, so many things could happen. And if you look at your experience, there are so many other people, I guarantee you, there's so many other people who have gone through similar processes as you. Like, suicide is not an uncommon thing in the world that we live in, unfortunately. Hardships in marriage and relationships are not an uncommon thing. This happens probably every hour, if not more, in the world. And most people don't recognize the gift that they're given in that situation. But you recognize it for what it is. It was the gift of life. It was a rebirth, in a sense. Mm-hmm. That so many things could have gone wrong, but it didn't. Why? And out of that was born something incredibly powerful. Not only did you build yourself and your life up, but you're serving others in the process. And I'm sure you're enjoying it a lot too, which is a whole different story. And then this is also a point for coaches to recognize that the coaches that I've talked to who are heart-centered, almost always their story has this theme of this going through that. It doesn't matter what the struggle is. It could be in their relationship, life, business. They go through that, and then all of a sudden there's this moment of struggle and realization that boom, changes everything. And instead of becoming a victim to the circumstances, they feel empowered, and not only feel empowered, but they tend to go towards empowering others. And their profession generally begins before they even recognize what the profession is. Just like you, just like I have a very similar process. I'm sure if Sherry shared it, like we have this tendency of helping others in weird ways. And then a lot of times we think it's normal until somebody tells us like, that was very helpful. Like, what? Really? Really? That's the case.
I knew that, or I thought everybody did that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it is exactly that. And the funny part about it is every single one of my clients, which is absolutely amazing to me, is that every last one of them, something that's happening in their life, I've actually been through it. I've experienced it. And that's why, like I said, once the dust settles and I realized that all of the things that I've been through, I was able to help other people that's going through those same things. you know? So when I have clients that tell me, well, she cheated or he cheated, you don't understand. And I have to explain to them. I say, hold on, wait a minute. I say, can I share my story with you for just a little part of it? And they're like, yeah, sure. I said, okay. I say, yes, I'm going on 14 years of a successful marriage now. I'm like, but before my wife, it wasn't that way. I said, the woman that before me loving my wife as much as I love her, there was a woman that I loved as well, not as much as I love my wife, but at that moment, I loved her more than anybody I loved in my life. And she was cheating on me constantly. She was cheating on me with the same guy, even moving the guy into the house that we supposed to be getting together when my furniture was sitting in there. I'm like, so I do understand. I do get it, And then when one guy said to me, well, no, it was one of the ladies, she said, well, you're not with her anymore. You're not with her anymore. So, I'm still trying to work through this. I said, also, let me explain to you something. I said, through my program, through the things that, that I teach clients, and by me knowing these things myself, I said, I'm gonna tell you right now, if she would have showed me that she was willing to make some adjustments or willing to work towards bettering our relationship, I said, I would have still been with her. I said, I would have still been with her. I said, but the thing is, even though I was willing to do the work, she wasn't. She wasn't a person that will even accept her doing anything wrong. I said, so with me saying this, I do understand where you're at. And I do understand, that it's painful and it hurts. And I do understand that, and I can literally tell you, I can relate. I felt that, I said, again, like I told you, I tried to commit suicide. So this is how much I love this woman. I'm like, so I know, I get it, I said, that's why we're going to work through it. We're going to work through it. And I said, and through my journey and through my struggles and through my pain, I can relate to you. And I do understand. So, we can do it. If I made it, you can make it, so, by being able to, so everything that I went through, I knew, I said, you know what, I can relate, and even men, we are the toughest, right? So with my men clients, they're like,
we say,
you're right. Right. But with men, it's like, with men, they say, and a couple of my couples have said this, is that they like the fact of dealing with a coach that is married, that's in a successful marriage. Because it's like, to know that I've came from a place where I had a failed marriage and I had some horrible relationships, and I'm in a successful marriage now, then guess what? I had to make some adjustments along the way, to get to where I am now. There had to be some adjustments. So knowing that I can share those adjustments with them, they're actually more inclined to even listen and to do the work, because I'm living proof of it.
Yeah, you practice what you preach.
Yeah, I'm not just a coach that's saying, oh no, I'm not married. I'm not getting married yet. I'm and nothing against single coaches. Nothing against single coaches. But, just trying to explain to them, what a successful marriage looks like. If I wasn't married, all I can do is give you examples of successful marriages I've seen, not actually being in one. So, it just makes a difference.
Yeah.
I really love how you just you actually modeled something really powerful in the marketing world, and that is that if people don't understand your struggle, they won't buy your success or the programs that promise those successes. So the fact that you can be vulnerable and open, and this is not just in our sessions. I mean, if a coach needs to build their business, and nowadays social media or however you're promoting yourself, even if it's not social media, through whatever, you need to share, because if people don't see your struggle, they will not understand that you can help them. They won't be, and you mentioned it, they can't relate with you, which is really powerful. I do want to go into now, if we can go a little bit more nuanced, because there's a big difference between a successful marriage versus a marriage that's intact on paper. I would guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that would be, I think, really, really cool to go into, is because as coaches, we might, like, a lot of people they look like they're in successful marriages, and on paper it looks great, and even in their lifestyle it looks great. But in my experience, at least, most people I've talked to, they're more like roommates than they are intimate partners. And so how has it been? I mean, we're looking at it from a life coach's perspective, but also specifically in the relationship. And what have been your challenges in helping people through that, and how have you helped them define that what that success means to them?
Well, for me, and I'm going to be honest and transparent, is realizing the clients that's actually really willing to do the work, because it's going to require work. It's going to require work on both ends. So that's where I always start, because then we go into recognizing the issues, the problems, the challenges. But I want to know if you're willing to do the work first, and how much your marriage or your relationship mean to you. So I asked my clients, I said, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much are you willing to put in, repairing or saving your relationship or marriage? How fully committed are you on doing that? Because it's going to require work, and it's going to require for you to be transparent with me, just like I'm going to be transparent and honest with you. So once I know that they're willing to do the work, then we find out initially what that challenge is, what the challenge that they're having in their relationship. So that's kind of where I start. But it makes me want to get into, I'm kind of over the place now, because I'm going to explain the program to you. Is that okay with you?
Sure. And just, can you clarify, do you work with couples like separately, together, or one side? Can you clarify that part?
I work with them together.
Okay.
I work with them together, and if they request a separate session, then I'll also provide them that. Excuse me. And I also support them, via text if they have any, issues or anything they kind of want to discuss,
Okay.
So however that might look like for them. So I have couples where, the husband,
Oh, I think we just lost him.
Is that Willie?
I think so. Willie, come back.
Come back to us.
girlfriend, the same, but I support them.
We lost you for a little bit. Could you repeat whatever you were saying? You're explaining your program, your work together.
15 seconds. You were like,
Oh man, I was doing the running man. So yeah, what I do is I support them together. I like to have them together and discuss it. That way, both clients, what I found is both clients will say, you know what, he or she has never opened up. I've never heard him, or I never heard her say this, or now I understand it. By a third party being there, now I get it. Yeah. So I like to have them together and discuss it.
Yeah. Awesome.
And how do you market to your clientele? What has been your approach that has worked so far?
So far, I've gotten several, referrals from other clients. But I actually started off, and I think I mentioned this. I started off by reaching out to a lead generation system, and it was called Thumbtack. So I had signed up for that, because I was just, getting my name out there, getting my business started. And what I loved about Thumbtack is people that's looking for what we do. They're looking for either, a life coach or a relationship coach, or and they look for therapists as well. So they're looking for someone to help them with their relationship or their marriage. Yeah. So I will actually, once I see them out there, I either can reach out to them and, and let them know how it is that I can help them, or they will actually see me out there and they will contact me and say, hey, I found you on Thuntech, can we schedule a session? And a lot of times, they want to talk price first. And of course, I'm like, you know what, first we have to make sure that we're a good fit before we even discuss price. And then that's it. And it goes from there.
Yeah. So I think more than any other guest we've had on the podcast so far, I think you, from my experience, because my experience is in the therapy world, then transferring into coaching. So I understand the world of mental health, the world of insurance reimbursements, the world of all of that stuff way more than I'd like to admit. And I also have a master's in marriage and family therapy and have done a fair amount of couples work over the years as well. And so I think I think the challenge is that with marital counseling, they can choose, do I see a therapist or do I see a coach? And in their mind, it's like a commodity, which is it's either product or product B. And so I think your challenge, which I think you're really working to meet head on, is how do I take it away from being a commodity? My services are not a commodity. My services are completely different, or do you differentiate yourself so that, excuse me, so that it's not about price and rather it's about the actual results, which I would imagine is a hard sell. I mean, if somebody's saying, hey, I'm interested in life coach, they're probably going into that knowing they're going to pay out of pocket. But if they're saying, hey, I need marital help, they could potentially use their health insurance, which so I think it's an interesting challenge that you have that some other coaches may not have. And I love that you are kind of trying to meet that head on at the beginning.
It's actually, for me, I'm that type of person that, just like you said, throwing down the gauntlet, right? I'm like, challenge accepted. So for me to be able to talk to a client and let them know, say, look, allow me the opportunity to provide you with a service to see, so that you can find value in it. And I always let them know, I say, look, let's have our intake session. And I said, and I can guarantee you that you're going to come away with some value from that. You will find value. I said, regardless to if you decide to hire me or not, you still will walk away with something valuable that would actually help your marriage or help your relationship. Yeah. So then after that, then if, you still want to move forward, then we discuss price. But until then, we need to make sure we're a good fit. If we're a good fit, then we move forward. If we're not, then at least you still walk away with something valuable. So it's a win-win situation, right? And most of the time they're like, oh yeah, it is. I said, exactly. So if I can provide you with something that would impact your relationship or your marriage for the better, wouldn't that be worth the time?
I love how you said it, how you put it, is that it's the experience is going to matter a lot, is whether somebody goes to a therapist or otherwise. The way Dr. Sherry put it is their mindset might, well, how much am I going to pay? Am I going to pay out of pocket? But that only matters until you see the experience, unless you experience it, because once you experience it, and if it's giving you the results, it's about ROI. What is this going to help you do? And we can talk about the impact of it. But one thing that's really important, the way I look at it, is I think that therapists have more of a challenge on their hands than coaches at this point. And the reason why I say this is that they're very comfortable in their spot, because insurance companies want to send them clients, and the way the therapy industry has evolved, it's become a job now. It's not so much as a passion for many of them. And I've sent quite a few of my clients, and they go to, and this is not against any therapist, but they go to a therapist it's like it wasn't helpful. And so I think this is going to get them to level up on the other end as coaches get better and better. There is room for therapy and there's room for coaching as well, and we can work together. In fact, they can work with each other very well. In fact, one of my clients who went through a breakup, I recommended to her, go get therapy first. The work that I'm going to do, you need to heal first a little bit. You need to process a lot of these things before we can move forward. And she did. She went off for about 6 months and then came back and we started coaching again. And I think there is a relationship that's being built, but I think the coaching industry, whether it's on the relationship end or personal coaching or whatever it is, it's gonna kind of level up the other side of the industry, which is important, but it might not be. It's just like any other industry that's been there for long enough and they have their comfort zones and they've just stayed there. But you essentially are setting the new standard as one of the few people who are setting the new standard, which is really cool.
And it's funny you say that, is because two of my couples, they have therapists. One of the couples, I think it's just the man that has a therapist, but the other couple, the wife and the husband, have their own separate therapists, and they have me in the middle. So they have their own therapist, and then I'm still there as well to assist them with with their marriage, and those therapists are helping them individually on themselves. So yeah, it does definitely go hand in hand. And the one thing that I've always explained to my clients, and I let them know, I say, look, I am not a therapist, just so that I'm not a therapist. I am a relationship coach, and Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong. With therapists, aren't therapists only able to work in the city that they're licensed in?
So it's a state-based license.
Well, state, that's what I meant, state. I'm not mean.
Yeah, so that's one of the challenges with therapy is that, you could work with, you're in Nevada, you could work with a couple in Alabama, whereas they can only reach out to a therapist mostly that's local, that's licensed in Alabama. Now there's some therapists that are licensed in more than one state, but at this point, there's not good reciprocity for licensure among all the different states. So whereas in like some of the medical professions, if you get licensed in one state, it's really easy just to get a license in all the rest of them and you can shift around and stuff like that, like in nursing. And that's not the way it is in mental health right now. So you definitely have the advantage in there. You can say, I work with people all over the nation because they seek me out for my specific skill set. They don't have to stay stuck with just whoever happens to be good enough locally. So I think there's
So, Sherry, I'm glad you told me that, because that's actually been one of my marketing points. So I just wanted to make sure, because
God bless you. You can use that.
You just put the stamp on it, because that's actually what was one of my marketing tools with one of my clients, is that I let them know. I said, with a therapist, I said, a therapist only can work with people in the state that they're licensed in. I said, me as being a coach, I said, I can talk and reach people all over the world. I said, so I'm not bound or restricted to, a state situation or scenario.
And let me just add a nuance to that, just to give you a little bit more steam and people that are listening to this. One of the challenges now that therapists are having, so let's use that Alabama example. Let's say that your couple in Alabama, they are location independent, which most of us know what that means, is that, Faisal has the opportunity to go on his RV and he can be wherever. So the challenge that therapists are having is that when that Alabama independent location people, like let's say they're vacationing in Florida or in Maine, technically the therapist can't treat them while they're in that state unless they jump through a bunch of hoops, get the approval for a short, limited amount of time from that state. I mean, it's ridiculous. So those are some of the bureaucracies that are getting in the way of treatment, which as a coach, you don't have to worry about that. And you can let them know if they travel a lot, great. A coach is a great way to go because you're going to continue to maintain continuity in that relationship.
Yes, great. Thank you. Because like I said, I had read up on it, and then I also heard it, but I don't know any therapists, or anything. So I'm like, man, I don't have anybody really to fact check this or bounce this off of. I'm like, I'm kind of gonna roll with it right now. Until somebody
I'll
say,
deal with it afterwards.
right, until somebody say, Willie, no, that's not true. Then I'll be like, what, really? So
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. So and this is interesting because the way I look at it, I think coaches are in a gray area, a lot like Uber when they started out.
Mhm.
And I actually, when I was starting out my business, I've shared this, I did Uber, and especially in Toronto region, as it started, it was huge. It's a big city. It's like now what is it, that 6 million population, the greater Toronto area.
Wow.
And as Uber started, first of all, it just started to look like in the taxi companies, like whatever, that's not going to last, because had been a few other ones. But then it started picking up, and government and both taxi companies, they started noticing him, and there comes the lawsuits. And the lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was completely thrown off by the judge. Is like, what do you want me to do? Shut down Toronto? Because at that point, half of them were using it, especially in the downtown core. And that second, you don't have a case. And that gray area really helped build the business, and they really took advantage of it. And this also goes towards the bureaucracy. I think that like there is a balance in regulation versus freedom, obviously, in there, because we need regulations to some degree because of the ethical aspects of any profession. Because if they weren't there, and I mean, anybody could take advantage of a lot of these things. And we can't always assume that everybody has the best at heart in all of this stuff. But then the other side of it is what Dr. Sherry talked about, the bureaucracy. And I think for coaches, as this builds into an industry, and it's just a matter of time, because all it has to do is start going on the radar of government and other companies, then it starts to go towards regulation. When it does, then I think the coaches that are here right now that are kind of setting the stage, they need to become the advocates of what kind of business world do we want to create. Because I would sure not want to be limited to one area. Human beings are the same all around the world. And in fact, I think you get better as a coach as you're exposed to different cultures and different places and different regions, different contexts, coach different people. You definitely have to get training. Definitely need to keep expanding and increase knowledge base and awareness and all sorts of stuff. But understanding that we're also setting the tone for how business is going to be conducted. And if we can kind of at least follow the Uber kind of example, they're worldwide. They have no limitations on that. I think I want to see coaching like that. That's good for business, and that's good for people too, I think.
Yeah. And I love it because, again, like you said, I've probably had only, it is funny, I've actually probably had one client in Vegas. All of my clients are in a different time zone. And that's probably one of the most challenging things for me is, all of the time zones. And, and when I'm scheduling, like, okay, wait a minute, you're 2 hours. Okay. You're 3 hours. Okay. And that's probably only the most challenging part. But other than that, I love it, because again, like you said, to just be able to deal with different people just all over, it really strengthens you as a coach. And also, to kind of be fearless on it, be fearless with the coaching and, and not be afraid to challenge. And that's the one thing that I love about CMC is that before I joined CMC, that honestly was a struggle of mine. I wouldn't challenge my clients. I would challenge them to a certain extent, but I wouldn't challenge them deeply, and I wouldn't tell them, even up front, especially with men, letting them know, like, look, I'm going to be up front and let you know, I'm not going to agree with everything that you say. I'm going to challenge you. If I see something that poses a question, I'm going to ask you, so that's why I want you to be transparent with me just as well as I'm going to be with you, and to know we're in a safe place, and we can talk about anything. Because Sherry, I've heard some things that she don't do this, he don't do that. I want her to do this, I want her to do that, So
I know more about sex lives than I ever. Like, I'll be a mental note. I'm like, wow, I'm never doing that.
Right. or
like,
you did not ever ask me.
So no, this is really amazing, and I love the challenge piece that you're bringing up, and I'm actually curious to ask this because I do couples coaching too. In fact, I've done coaching with the whole family, not just the couple part, but also with the kids, and that was it's been one of the most amazing experiences as a coach because I started with coaching the husband, and then with the wife, and then with the couple, then with the 17-year-old, then with the 15-year-old, then in a sense together. It just blew my mind how much of their family dynamics affected how they related with each other, how they understood each other, how they moved forward. So many blind spots. And I'm like, holy shoot, that's happening to me too. That's my first time. I'm like, what am I missing in this picture? That was a scary thought the first time. But and for me, and this might be completely my bias, but one and I tell my clients this when I go into relationship coaching, I think it's an uncharted territory a lot of times. Even when I'm going through relationship coaching too, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and I don't actually give them the goal of, hey, you're going to stay happy in the marriage, or you're going to be together, or I'm like, a lot of things can come out of this. My job is not to keep you together. My job is to help you figure out what is best for you and your family, and what is best for each of your paths forward. And in fact, the way I do it is, ideally speaking, I coach them separately, but then I coach them together too. I actually coach them more separately than I do together because what I've seen is that if you haven't had a personal growth piece, it's very hard for people to grow in relationships. So I want to know your take at how you've approached it, and how do you begin these conversations with your clients?
Okay, so what my program is it's called the RTG, and it stands for the R is the request versus requirement, and then the T is the trigger, and the G is the game plan. Okay, so I always start with the request versus requirement. And with that piece right there, that's what I utilize in my intake sessions. So what we do is we go through, I get the clients to write on a sheet of paper. On the left side, they put request. On the right side, they put requirement. I want them to come up with 5 to 10 things on each side. All right. A request is something that they want out of the relationship that's not necessarily there, but if they don't get it, it's not relationship ending. Something like, if the wife wants her husband to open her car door for her and he doesn't do it right now. That's what a request looks like. If he doesn't do it, she's not going to divorce him because he's not opening the car door. But the requirement is the part where it gets deeper, because the requirement can be something that's a must have in the relationship. And if you don't get it, then it can be, damaging to the relationship. Or if it's something that is something that can exist in a relationship, like infidelity, or, something like, emotional abuse, things like that. So we find out what 5 to 10 things are on each side. That's that first piece. So when I talk to them together, and the reason why I talk to them together is because I first have them write those lists down and I have them discuss it with each other. And then when we come back to our first session, we talk about it and we focus on just the request side first. And once we go through the requests, I ask the husband, what his requests are. And then once he tells me what they are, I have him categorize them from 1 to 5 as far as importance. And so once we know that, then we actually discuss that. And it's helpful that the wife is there, because even though they discussed it, when we discuss it, I can ask questions like, all right, Brittany, did you hear what Nick said? Oh yeah. Okay, Nick, exactly what does that mean to you? And explain deeply exactly what this is. And once he does that, he didn't explain that deeply to her when they first discussed it. So now she's like, Oh, okay, now I get it. All right. So then we actually come up with a resolution right then and there on that request. So now that that's taken care of, then we move to the next one. And after we go through that, then we go to her side and we get her request. And then once we get all of her requests, down, get them all categorized and put in whatever, importancy from 1 to 5, and then we discuss it. And what I found is that from just that little piece, and that's just one session, just from that one little piece, they've gained some insight of what the other person really actually wants. Like my clients yesterday, he wanted her to actually help with the bills, and when they first got together, she's like, he tells her, well, don't worry about all the bills. I got all the bills. I'm the man, so don't worry about it, but then that actually wound up being one of his requests that he would want for her to help with the bills, and in discussing that, she's like, I'm excited to help with the bills. I want to help with the bills, but he told her not to. So that was the disconnect. But then finding out that that was one of his requests, and she said, I'm willing to meet that request. I can meet that request. I'm excited to meet that request. So that's something that was always in the back of his mind that was bothering him, that we was able to wipe off the table.
That's awesome.
Now that request is being met, so it's just those things. That's why I like to coach them together, because then we can have that conversation on whatever it is that can be an issue. So then in our next session, if we get through all of the requests on both sides, then we're good. But if we're not, then our next session, we'll finish off the request. Then we go off into the requirement, and we start discussing the requirements and finding out exactly what is the requirements that they need in their marriage to make that, for their relationship to be successful to them. And then we discuss it and we go through it. And then after we go through all of that, then we go into the triggers and find out what are those triggers that cause them to, think about something that's, that they had in a past relationship that they're bringing into this relationship that's damaging. Or if there was infidelity, what is it that's triggering those feelings that you had when that infidelity occurred? So we go through all of the possible triggers and letting them know, finding out if they know what a trigger is, if they even recognize the triggers and what those triggers are. And I actually send them some, there's a YouTube video that I liked, and I send it to them, concerning triggers. And the doctor in that also let them know that there's positive triggers, because people don't know that. People don't know that there's positive triggers as well as negative triggers. So we go through that and we discuss it. And then after we go through that, then the last thing is the game plan. We come up with a game plan to keep things on track, to stay focused, and what needs to happen in order for them to stay on track. And that's the entire RTG program. So that's why I like, having couples together so that we can discuss it, together, so that they can actually start to communicate more, because a lot of them, especially the men, unfortunately, are very passive. The men, just want to, all right, whatever, they don't want to really talk about it. They don't want to talk about their feelings. They don't want to talk about what it is that they want. They don't want to talk about their desires. If they're not having, if there is no intimacy, they just be like, all right, forget it, whatever, and sweep it under the rug and don't worry about it. And not realizing that their wife want them just as much as they want their wives. Their wives want to be as intimate with them as they want to be intimate with them as well. So it's like, but they don't talk about it. They don't communicate about it. And, a lot of men think if I come here and I just stand naked in front of you, then, that it's time that it's on.
I think that's a male fantasy.
Yeah, right.
Quite removed from reality.
Right. I'm like, hey, you know what I want, but, in a woman's mind, it's like, what are you doing, dude? I'm watching TV. You know what I'm saying? Put
on some clothes and learn how to talk.
Put on some clothes.
Sure.
Something, dude, come on, put that away.
Right.
That's hilarious. I love that model that you walked us through. That sounds very, very helpful. Now I'm curious, because you mentioned that you've learned to challenge more. Now, within that model, how have you learned to challenge? Because you mentioned that you don't always agree. And in fact, a lot of times I don't agree with my clients, but how have you learned to challenge your clients to move forward in a positive direction? What would that look like in your kind of sessions, in your coaching? I think that's important.
So an example is one of my clients, he definitely always want to blame his, and they're not married yet. They will be, but he always wants to blame her for things and not looking at exactly what it is that he's doing, you know? So for example, I asked him, I said, so he said that one of his requests is that he would like for her to touch him more. Okay. So I asked him, I said, all right, exactly what do you mean by touching you more? What does that look like? What would you like for her to do? How would you like for her to touch you? What is that? Explain that more to me. Well, she don't never do this and she don't ever do that. I said, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, how would you like for her to touch you? You know, so he posed that being a request, but he really didn't want to answer it. So he's like, well, what I mean is, you know, so every time we get ready to go to bed, she always talking. I was like, and so I'm like, again, that's not what I asked you. That's not what I asked you. You said that you would like for her to touch you more, right? Yeah, I said that. Okay, that's what you said. Tell me and let her know exactly what that looked like. How would you like for her to touch you? What would you like for her to touch? What do you mean by that? Just saying touch you is very general. Explain to me, explain to her exactly what that is and what that looks like for you and how would that make you feel? Then he decided to answer the question. But before, you know, and I'm pretty sure he said that to her. Like, I want you to touch me more. And she's like, okay, you know, she didn't know what that was. She didn't know exactly what he
That could be a slap too.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That could be anything, right?
And this is actually a very powerful point you're bringing up, because there are two things. One, the request is not clear. And just based on the evasion of the questions that you're asking, it sounds, you can tell like the reason why he can't ask is because it requires a lot of vulnerability, because there's a risk that he'll be rejected. And then it's like, well, he will go in towards all the things that he doesn't want versus the thing that he wants. Right. And we do that in our life too. We complain about all the things that we don't want instead of actually really focusing, well, what do we really want out of life? And I think that's really powerful that you're challenging to really think through that. And it really does require, especially and I'm guilty of that. And that's actually been a huge change, is that to actually really make a clear request with the risk that might not be accepted, or that there might be a different outcome out of that is risky, especially with the inflated male ego, if we bring that into the picture. And it's really awesome, and I just want to honor you for because those, and the one thing we didn't talk about is the impact of that. So in couples, in a relationship, especially in a marriage, for the most part, they have kids, and these kids, what do? They go off into the world. What happens in the world? And I'll relate George Carlin's comment around this. It's going to sound really bad. I don't know if anybody here knows George Carlin, one of my favorite comedians. He said that about, he's like, you know, when you look at the political world, he was talking about the US at the time, so it's decades ago. He's like, everybody complains about politicians and leaders and all these people. It's like, do you ever think where these people come from? Did they just drop out of the sky? Or he's like, well, I'll tell you this, they come from normal households in America. And he put it this way, I'm quoting, not me, garbage in, garbage out. I'm not saying that people, the challenges that we have in our homes, that's a microcosm of the challenges in the world. And you can't disconnect the two. In fact, the positive way of putting it, one of my favorite philosophers said that is that our family is the initiation into the world.
Yeah.
We lose sight of family, the world is already gone. You can put in all sorts of programs and stuff, and we've done enough of that. They don't work. Because who's running those programs?
I agree 100%. And you know, it's up to us. And like one of my coworkers, I actually, you know, told her that it's up to us to create the next healthy, mentally healthy generation. You know, as parents, you know, it's us to be able to instill in our kids, you know, the values and the beliefs that would, you know, help them be successful in the world, and also provide them with the tools to be able to utilize when they get out into the world to be able to make good decisions. Because we can't be with them all the time, 100% of the time. And a lot of times, you know, they're going to see things and they're going to do things that we're not going to necessarily be aware of. We just got to make sure that we communicate with them, and again, give them those tools to be able to make good choices, you know, and make, you know, good decisions. Like every time my daughter walks out of the door, every single morning before she walks out of the door and go to school, I tell her, I said, baby, be awesome, be great, I love you. Every single solitary day. That's what I tell her. And since she was in kindergarten, she's been an A+ student. And whenever she's been with anyone other than me and her mother, they've always said she's been respectful. She's great to be around, you know, and her teachers love her. So that's what our jobs are to do as far as our kids is concerned, you know, and you know, people having successful relationships and successful marriages. Like I always ask my clients, I asked them if they have kids, and I asked them, you know, how do they feel that their kids view their relationship or their marriage? How do you think your kids view it? You know, and when they actually sit back and they think about that for a moment, they're like, holy crap, wait a minute. You know,
that's painful.
Yeah,
exactly. Sherry and I, we both feel that.
Exactly. You know, so you know, and then again, you know, it's about, you know, then them seeing that and them realizing it. Okay, so what would you like for your children to see? What type of relationship would you like for your children to experience? How would you like for your children to talk about your relationship, your marriage? What would they tell somebody else? What would they say to somebody else? How would you like for their marriage to look? You know, and ask those questions, you know, moving forward. And they're like, dang, you know, like,
I was thinking about the weekend.
Right, exactly. Man, why you have to do that? You know, why you have to go there? You know, so it's, you know, and again, you know, like I said, like I told my clients, and this is something that I'm going to create in the very, very near future. I just got to get with my wife on it. Is I told my clients, I'm going to create a plaque for everyone that completes the program, and I call it that couple over there. And that's what it's going to be, that couple over there. And what I get them to imagine and to think about, I said, imagine you're somewhere and you're sitting across the room from a couple, and you look at that couple and you see that couple, and they don't even have to talk. But when you look at them, you see the love in both of their eyes. You see their body movement. You see the gestures. You see how they treat each other. And it's just absolutely amazing. You just can't take your eyes off of them. You're like, you're actually, you're in envy. You're jealous, you know, because you see how amazing it is. If you don't have that type of relationship and you see it and you're like, man, look at them. You know, they're just touching each other, just happy, just smiling, just laughing. And, you know, man, I want that type of relationship. I want that type of marriage. I'm like, that's that couple over there. I said, that's what I strive to push all my couples to. I said, so you complete the program, then I'm going to create a plaque that you're that couple over there. You know,
I love that.
You see what I'm saying? So
I love it.
yeah, it's like, so that's, I said, I'm going to create that. And I want you to be able to put that on your wall. So anytime you guys are having any kind of dispute or disagreement or anything, You can have something you can look at and be like, wait a minute. We are that couple over there. Is this really worth it, what we're arguing about? Is it going to matter, 5 minutes from now? Is it going to matter 10 years from now? If it's not going to matter, why are we sitting up here fighting about this? Why are we arguing about this?
Yeah.
Why should that, is this argument really as big as we're making it? I'm like, so then you have something that you can actually see and you can focus on. And and I ask couples opinion, I'm like, how do you feel that might, help you? And they're like, oh man, that honestly, that would be great, because, it's like, if we start going off track and we see that, it kind of will reel us back in.
I love the idea of having something to memorialize their journey with you and to kind of take that forward. I think that's great.
Yeah, I love that too. When I know, Dr. Cherry, you're transitioning, I want to just mention one thing because it was implicit, and I want to try to make it more explicit. And the implicit thing there was that children, they see the world through the example of their parents. And in fact, it's so dominant that I work with people when they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they still behave the way their parents behaved. It's so powerful. They still think the way their parents, unless they choose to change otherwise. So whatever model they see in their home is the reality they're going to see outside. If they see a peaceful, loving, connected, a powerful family, they see the human family as that. They see their country as that. If they see a disconnected, if they see violent, emotionally or physically, if they see a place where they're not supported, they see the same world out there. You can't separate the two. And then they bring those same challenges in there. So, and one of the things I've often talked about with my coach friends is like, we have training for all sorts of things, from driving cars to all sorts of things, and we should. The most dangerous thing and the most important thing in our life, we don't have training for couples. It's like no parent can say when they get into a relationship, they were ready to go. I'm like, what the hell did I just walk into? Nobody told me this. And every couple who's been a couple is like, now you know. I'm like, you couldn't tell me to get a training or something? Like, I didn't get it either.
It's so funny you say that. It's because, like, again, when I have a discussion, there's a guy that I'm cool with that he doesn't have any kids. And I told him, like, I spoke about the tools, right? I said, because of my daughter seeing how me and my wife interact with each other, how we talk to each other, how we love each other and everything, I said, that's an example for her. I said, growing up, when she's had friends that, parents was divorced or weren't together or anything, she couldn't understand it, why she couldn't see, little Susie, because it's not her mom's weekend. She couldn't understand that because she don't see that in our household. She don't see us being separate, and we had to explain to her that, all parents and, all mommy and daddies aren't always together and blah, blah, blah. And, she's like, well, you and mommy are together. You and mommy love each other. You and mommy, so everything that she sees and what she goes off of is the structure that we have and the respect that we have for each other. So moving forward, when she gets into a relationship or when she starts to dating and things like that, I'm hoping that she will be able to recognize and notice those red flags from some type of knucklehead that's treating her unfairly.
Absolutely. Oh, I call my girls out on that. I will tell them, I'm like, girls, have you ever seen your dad yell at me? Have you ever seen me yell at your dad? And they'll be like, no. I'm like, then don't, I'm like, I'm already like overtly planting these in their brain. Then, if anybody ever treats you like that, so I try to harness our goodness, in our marriage too. I'm like, girls, don't put up with somebody that, So Willie, we're going to transition into the last 4 questions of our time together. This has been super fascinating. What is one of the most influential books for you in your coaching journey?
Always, Think and Go Rich, because that's that piece of becoming an entrepreneur, right? I think that's a book that every entrepreneur needs to read and need to check out. And unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the book, but Jim Rohn, he's absolutely amazing. I actually have, and these young people don't know what CDs are, but I still have his CD in my car, right now, so
Right
yeah.
next to the track. What are some of the hobbies that you do to counterbalance all of the energy and time that you invest in your business and work?
Spending time with family, and I call it a hobby is because I have to make sure that I'm aware that family needs time, and whatever that looks like for my wife and for my daughter, if they want to watch a movie, if they want to go to the park, whatever that looks like, I make sure that I have time for them. And that's why in my mind, I make it as being a hobby because, family always still, no matter how great it is, it always still takes work. You still always have to contribute into it in order for it to still continue to be successful.
Yeah. What would you say separates a successful coach from the ones that give up or fail or just really never even get started?
I would say fear, fear of money, because not understanding their value and what it is that they are bringing, to the session or to their business, and also continuation to want to continue and to connect with, other like-minded individuals or other coaches in order to continue to grow their business.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Last question, Willie, Mr. Willie. Where is the field of coaching headed, in your opinion?
Oh, I think that it's heading to, honestly, I think it's headed far and beyond therapy, because the more people that get wind of coaching and how successful you can actually be as a person from coaching, and how lucrative the business is as well, I think it's going to go way far and beyond therapy. So I just see it at the top and just continue to just go further and further. It's actually seen on LinkedIn that there are actually companies now hiring life coaches.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff for coaches. I love it, and I agree with that. And I just want to thank you, Willie, for taking the time to spend with us and really sharing vulnerably your experience and what you've gone through. I think it's going to be really inspirational, and it has been inspirational for those who've been listening to this, and just your model, the courage that you've shown to actually leverage and use the challenges you've gone through to not only build an incredible life for yourself, but help others in the process and continue to build on that. And man, it's an understatement to say that we need you in the world, because if there's anywhere people need help in, it's definitely in relationship, because it impacts every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for your service and thank you for being here. Please share with our audience where can they find you.
Well, first, I want to thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited about it. I appreciate it. Name of my company is actually Divine You. So it's DevineU.com, or on Facebook, Divine You at Facebook Coaching. Divine You Coaching on Facebook. So those are the two places where you can actually find me.
Awesome.
And for those who are listening, if you got value out of this, if you know a coach who can get value out of the discussion that we had, please like and share this post if you're watching it live or on podcast platforms or YouTube or wherever. Also, if you're interested in joining our community that Willie talked about, we all talked about, Coaching Mastery Community, please go to coachingmasterycommunity.com, where we help coaches develop business mastery and coaching mastery within a supportive community of incredible coaches just like Willie.
Hey.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.